Thank you so much for joining this session. This is Annotation in Action. Faculty champions share their tips. My name is Jessica George, and I'm the Customer Success Manager for the West region of North America. So you might see me in other social annotation workshops for Hypothesis. And joining us today is Michael Thompson, instructor of history at Chabot College, and Jessica Peterson, Assistant Professor of Criminology and Criminal Justice at Southern Oregon University. And I just wanted to briefly go over a couple of housekeeping items. So just a reminder that you can enable closed captioning via the Zoom menu at the bottom of your screen. And then also, if you're wanting to share any questions or comments for our panelists today, feel free to use the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom menu as well. So I'm going to stop sharing and we will go ahead and begin. So Michael, I will begin with you. So can you introduce yourself, the courses that you teach, and how you use social annotation presently in your courses?
Okay. Good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. I'm Michael Thompson. I teach at Chabot College, which is in Hayward, California. I teach American history and African American history, mainly survey courses, both in person and online modalities. And I currently use annotation hypothesis really and it's integrated into the Canvas learning management system at Chabot to have my students annotate the course material. I and that's presented both as readings and as YouTube videos. It helps them organize their research using the tags feature. Um, and it kind of helps them discover the important points uh, as they kind of go through the different study areas that I set up in my courses.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you
Hmm.
about the tagging and research function later, but
Hmm.
thanks for sharing those ideas just to start us out.
Hmm.
And Jessica, can you introduce yourself and let us know what courses you teach and how you're currently using social annotation?
Yeah, my name is Jessica Peterson, and I am an assistant professor um, at Southern Oregon University. This is my third year here. Um, and mostly, so in the criminology and criminal justice department here, I teach a pretty wide variety of courses, everything from our intro to the American criminal justice system, intro to criminology. I teach our policing courses, I teach our law and society courses. And then I teach some electives like crime and media, hate crimes. So really a wide array of classes and levels as well. So lower division and upper division courses. And I also teach online and in person, so both modalities. The main ways in which I've been using hypothesis are for class readings. So, as a way of one, encouraging students to do the class readings by attaching some points and accountability to them. And then, one way that I've been using them with a lot of, I feel like, success and positive feedback from students is through my law and society class. I have them read uh, versions of Supreme Court cases that I've condensed down, and it's kind of the I don't know, an altered version or an undergraduate level version of doing a case brief. So I have them do it as a note, or use annotations on the Supreme Court um, decision documents, as opposed to having them do some version of a case brief where my concern is getting regurgitated Google searches, right? Getting AI generated responses and stuff. So this, I think, tries to make sure that we're maintaining integrity, and that they're actually using and engaging the readings. So those are the two primary ways I've been using it currently.
Thank you so much. We're going to start by kind of addressing the challenges that each of you might have been trying to address in adopting social annotation. And then Jessica will be sharing um, and kind of taking a look at some applied activities. So I am going to ask my next question, which is Michael. What first drew you to social annotation? Was there a colleague that had shared, their experience? And was there a particular challenge or goal you were trying to address in adopting this tool?
Yeah, I've been doing some form of social annotation for about a decade, and it started with Google Docs, and then genius.com, which started off as Rap Genius. So it was basically a platform that started off with annotation of music lyrics, and they wanted to kind of enter the education space. So I started with them and wound up getting a lot of swag for my students through that. And then an earlier version of Hypothesis, and then Perusal, then back to Hypothesis for a while. And what I was um, trying to get at is some type of critical engagement with the course material. Um, what might have started off as like, I just want them to do the reading, kind of became like more focused on my part and kind of connecting it to the other things, the other skills that I wanted them to develop in the classroom.
That's really helpful. As an aside, you're the second person who's mentioned annotation and Rap Genius in a conversation with me this week, which
Yeah.
is um, just serendipitous, maybe. That's really helpful. I think that's how a lot of people adopting social annotation, whether it's hypothesis or not, begin. They want to incentivize just simply reading the digital text, and then they kind of see where else annotation might fit in their pedagogy. Like for you, it sounds like it might be research skills and then other kinds of critical thinking before they need to do other kinds of assignments. So that's really helpful for thinking about how that path might go in a classroom.
Mhm.
Jessica, how about you? How did you first learn about social annotation? And was there a similar kind of goal that you were trying to address?
Yeah, I think I didn't actually know. I'd never used a tool similar to this. I'd never tried this approach until I think it was a couple terms ago, maybe last academic year, that just our office on campus that provides instructional design help and things of that nature mentioned that we had this tool. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to just try it out. And I tried it on a few assignments and classes. Again, at that point, it was really just to get them to do the reading. I mean, that was pretty much my only goal when I was first trying it. And I realized it had a lot of, beyond just trying to incentivize reading, I think the critical reading and critically applying other course material in that reading process is what really kept me using it and kind of expanding how I use it. Plus, I have had a lot of positive student feedback from it, so all of those things together made it stick in my courses. I think it also allows for, especially in an online class, if it's an online only class, it does give a little bit more of that collaborative piece. Students can engage with each other in a way that's not just a forum post. I feel like I still use forums sometimes, but I know that students see them as being very overused, or they kind of become this, oh, we have to respond twice to a classmate, blah, blah, blah. And I think that I've seen more critical engagement just in annotations that they're having on a document, on a reading that they're doing, as opposed to saying, hey, you read this, now talk about main points or whatever it is, whatever your prompts are in a forum post. So I saw it as a way to kind of give them other ways to, one, collaborate with each other, but also to encourage um, critical engagement in the readings. And I can talk about some of the other things that I feel like have been benefits from using it as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to ask one more kind of off the script question before I have you share your screen. But you bring up teaching in different modalities, online and in person. I want to focus on online just with this question, but I know that a lot of faculty are thinking about regular and substantive interaction, and these are always instructor initiated interactions. Um, I know when I use social annotation, I feel like the pressure for me is alleviated a little bit as well versus traditional discussion boards. Because when my students are writing like 3 paragraph responses to a traditional discussion board prompt, I feel kind of pressure to reciprocate some super poignant response. But the informal conversational nature of annotation where I can kind of like drop in and bring in some external references or, this is really interesting. Have you thought about X, Y, and Z? It um, kind of takes the load off of me a little bit as well. I was curious if either of you have felt this way or kind of what experience you have had as an instructor also engaging in the annotation discussions. And I'll toss that back to Michael first.
Um, yeah, I think that's true. Although, I mean, even in formal discussion boards, tend to kind of stay out of the way. It's like I really want them, and that's particularly easy with hypothesis with social annotation. It's very easy for me to stay out of the way, but I don't want them to feel that I want them to, I mean, this is actually supposed to be the moment when they're making mistakes. Like, otherwise, they wouldn't be in the class, right? So it's okay for them to get something wrong at this point while they're reading something. And often those are the moments when which are most useful pedagogically for the students themselves. They'll correct each other. I don't have to go in. So that's been a kind of a good part of it. That that it kind of gives them agency and allows them to realize their their own knowledge, right? And what they're bringing to whatever it is that they're reading or watching.
Thank you. That's a really helpful reminder too that there's the option to stay out of the way and kind of see how conversations evolve when they are student driven and they uh, often are more student driven with this kind of tool versus more traditional discussion post or board area. Jessica, I was curious what your experience as the instructor in those annotation discussions have been.
Yeah, I would agree with what Michael was saying. I think when I first kind of piloted, if you will, some of these assignments, my first instinct was like, I have to go in, and anytime a student raises a question, I have to answer it right there. I want to make sure that they don't feel like they're left hanging. But on the other hand, I have seen a lot more where students are willing to respond. I think in ways that they don't necessarily do in a forum. So either kind of correcting each other or bringing different perspectives or kind of answering each other's questions. So I have seen more of that engagement. Um, and I think that I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel as though once they have done those annotations, if I go in at a later point and respond to comments, I don't know how useful that is or how many students are going back and seeing that. So I feel like it's more of a it's good in the moment, like in the reading process. It's really good to be student led. For me, from the instructor side, what I have now started doing with that is doing kind of a run through of what are the comments, are there areas where students aren't understanding, and then I'll bring it up in class. We'll discuss it in class, or if it's an online course, I can share through an announcement to the course or something of that nature. So it's more of a way for me to go in and see where are the holes, or where are the things that aren't sticking, or where are the areas that students are confused, and then I can incorporate that into my lessons and things like that.
That's really helpful. And Jessica, I will have you share your screen so you can talk a little bit about
Yeah.
specifics. There's a great question in the Q&A, which I'll get to in a second here. And then while you're doing that, I just wanted to plug at Mentions because this is a new feature that we just released, which will hopefully have some of that helpfulness in drawing students back to the conversation when they might read something and forget it. If you respond, they'll be able to see when you respond via external notification. Um, so Jessica is going to take us through some of the assignments and ideas she's been thinking about.
Can you see screen okay? Okay, great.
Yes.
So yeah, and I'll do this. I'm happy to share this if anyone wants, if it would be helpful to anyone after the fact. But the key assignments, like I said, that I've been using, the case brief note instead of doing case briefs for my law focused classes has been really successful. Um, I think for more extensive assignments where I'm really wanting them to dive deep, I try to keep the groups really small in terms of how many students are annotating one document. And I do that as well if we're talking about a class that's really large, just so it's not 40 people annotating one document and things like that. But the case brief notes, um, I have had I have had students do some reflective assignments. So instead of having them do reflection memos like I've done in the past, um, I just have them annotate. I usually have, kind of not extensive requirements in terms of how many annotations, but have them use that page note feature, because that can be kind of a, hey, I've read this, I've made points throughout, and then this is my overall takeaways. These are the key takeaways, or these are the things that questions I still have, that sort of thing. And then I just have students do like whatever is set up for the class, right? The class readings that they should be doing. Um, I will turn those into hypothesis assignments, so that they're doing that alongside their classmates as opposed to, just reading their textbook, or they're reading solo. So some of the things, like I mentioned, that have why I continue to do this, or what I see as the benefit of using this. One, the collaboration, especially in online only classes, a lot of student feedback has focused on that, hey, it sometimes feels like you're in it all alone when it's an asynchronous online course. And this is really cool because it's a way for me to see what my classmates are thinking, or how they're making sense of these things. It definitely does encourage reading accountability. I think not only do I get more responses in class, when I ask, like, so what were the findings, or ask questions about readings they're supposed to do, but I feel like I've been getting uh, not surface level responses. They've been, I think, engaging it a little bit more critically and deeply, which is great for me. Great to see. Again, this guy kind of goes back to what we were talking about, but improving understanding where they can talk to each other, see each other's perspectives. I feel like it does help reduce some concerns over, are they just, putting something into ChatGPT and giving me a brief summary or reflection. I can kind of see what they're thinking as they go through the reading. So I feel like it cuts down on those potential concerns. Um, and then these are kind of what I mentioned a little bit, like it allows me to see issues, that places where maybe they're not grasping the information. I'm thinking especially for like a theory class, if you're having them read, um, you know, a, a an early sociologist kind of famous piece, right? There might be students who struggle with making sense of that, or how does that fit into what we're talking about. So I feel like it gives me places to see what I need to talk about in class. And sometimes there are just really great points that students bring up that I'm like, oh yeah, we should talk about that. I didn't include that in my lesson plan, but that'd be a good thing to discuss. So student feedback, I have not gotten any negative feedback. The only negative thing I guess I could say that students have said is if I have it set up to where it cuts off at a certain date because I want them to annotate before class, it does make the document inaccessible to them once that due date has hit. I use Moodle. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's the learning management system that we use. So that's the only negative thing that I've gotten, and so I've adjusted the way that I handle that. But I don't ask students to specifically comment on hypothesis. I just, at the end of my courses, ask for, um, what did you like? What did you not like about the course? Thinking about activities or course materials, what things stood out? Did you like that sort of thing? And I consistently get people mentioning the hypothesis assignments. And so pointing on some of the things that I mentioned, right? Like it uh, helps the class feel less monotonous. I think a lot of that is in reference to forums because I think that's become a fairly standard practice. And again, I use it still sometimes as well, but I think students like something a little bit different. So overall, just good feedback, which makes me encouraged to continue using it. And then the other things that I feel like I have learned since implementing this is the importance of how clear, concise, and thorough my instructions are, and how I communicate my expectations for what they are doing in the hypothesis assignments or using this tool. So, I have some assignments where it's very open. There's not a lot, I don't put a number of annotations that they have to do. Um, it's more, it's more open, right? And then others where I really want them to get certain things out of the readings, I'm really clear about those expectations up front. I think explanation of how you're grading them. So are you looking at, you must make X number of annotations versus I don't care how many, but I'm looking at how well you're engaging the text or how you're comparing to course material, those sorts of things. And then definitely providing resources, because the first time a student uses it, sometimes they've noted in feedback like, oh, it felt a little overwhelming at first because I've never used this before. So just providing clear resources where they go, what constitutes an annotation, especially what I can see, highlighting versus actual commenting, those sorts of things. So giving them that kind of clear stuff up front is really helpful. And then I'm not going to go over this. Like I said, obviously I can share this if anyone's interested, but this would be an example of more extensive directions that I give for the case brief notes, because that is a substantial part of the class, versus other things where maybe it's just instructions for general class readings, right? And so ways that I've kind of added added things to these instructions to make it really clear what expectations are. So yeah, again, welcome to happy to share this or talk a little bit more about specifics.
Jessica, I think this is a good time to ask one of the questions that's in our Q&A. And it has to do with assignment design. So I'm going to focus on the case briefs. And the question is, one of the huge advantages of social annotation versus traditional discussion forums is the ability to anchor conversation in the text. Could you talk more about how the assignment design, maybe for your case briefs, has changed for those types of assignments when you're using social annotation versus just your other kind of types of readings that you did before using social annotation with the case briefs?
Yeah, I think one major thing that I've noticed a shift is, you have some students who maybe, like traditionally, I would have them read these cases and then we talk about it in class. And there are students that for whatever reason, they're shy, they're anxious, they're just not big talkers, right? That you're not really getting much from those students in a discussion, a class-based discussion. And it's not because they don't have a lot to say sometimes. And so I think just as from the instructor perspective, I'm getting to see all of that stuff that I'm not necessarily seeing in a class-based setting, when that is the way that I am gathering information about something like a Supreme Court case. So that's nice to see. I think other changes, I guess, it does. So I haven't actually implemented this. I've thought about doing it in an online class when I teach the Law and Society class, having them in really small groups do the annotation. So maybe that's only 5 to 10 students in a group who are annotating a document, and then having a forum post after the fact where maybe they're coming from their individual groups where they've read and annotated, and now they're saying, "Hey, this was our group's takeaways, right, or major points, or things that really stood out to us," so that you're getting small level group work on the actual readings, and then they're coming back together and kind of comparing, well, what did different groups get out of reading this. So I haven't tried that yet, but that's one thing that I've seen as kind of a potential progression, um, to just again increase the collaboration and things of that nature.
Thanks for that. I've talked to another instructor who uses the tool for long court decisions as well, and just kind of supporting students as they read through those documents, which can be kind of cumbersome. They find the
Yes.
tool helpful for that too.
Yes, and
Um,
connections between justices. That's always interesting to see. Like, wait, this seems contradictory to the last one where this justice was talking about X, Y, and Z. So that's always fun to see.
oh, that's interesting. And you could use tags for that too to
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
see those patterns. Great. Michael, I wanted to return to you with the same question of kind of what sort of design considerations do you make using social annotation versus not using social annotation? And maybe like is there a specific skill that you are focusing on with using the tool?
Right. So I think I'm going to share my screen if I can get it right here. So I'm just showing my Canvas pages here. So let's see here. So here, for example, first thing I have my students do is um, annotate the course syllabus. And I start by giving them questions. So they're looking in the syllabus for specific questions, and they're um, also asking their own questions. And all of this is kind of instructions. um, and so they begin by kind of annotating the course syllabus. And for this first assignment, it's actually great that they're all kind of honing in on the same sentences. It's great. So it actually forces them to kind of have a conversation with each other because there are a bunch of them highlighted in the same sentences, and it gets them used to the practice of responding to each other. Um, Also gets them kind of used to the practice of tagging. Um, and my courses are pretty much set up. So everything from the introductory video lecture to reading of primary source materials to reading of secondary source material, they're all Canvas pages that they annotate with a hypothesis. And the reason why I chose pages over PDF files is that I have students kind of taking the class on all sorts of devices, on on tablets, on laptops, on computers, on their phones, and found that using pages allows them to do the annotation work. PDF files were kind of clunky. Um, So, and the other goal I kind of achieve is uh, it gives them. This is an example of kind of the videos chunked, um, but so here is a YouTube video, part of an introductory lecture where they're annotating primary source readings. And what I do is I tend to kind of what I do is uh, give my students study areas. So it kind of focuses their readings on specific areas that they're looking for rather than like read chapter one. So they're reading kind of with specific goals. And I kind of say, you choose three of the study areas and you're going to annotate for those study areas and you're going to tag for those different study areas as well. So this is example of a stories on the Constitution and slavery. The other thing that I do is I try to um, I try to follow some UDL principles, Universal Design for Learning. So particularly for secondary sources, I give them an option of a secondary source reading, typically, a part of a chapter from a textbook, an open source textbook, um, or kind of small, short videos. And what I found, my expectation was, well, students will choose one or the other. They'll choose a series of videos or they'll choose the readings. And what was surprising to me is that some of them do it all, which I'm not requiring them to do. Um, a lot of them do some kind of combination. Um, and I'm happy about that. So there might be some videos where there's no annotations at all, and a video where there's lots of annotations, and it's like I don't really care how they kind of consume the information and acquire the knowledge as long as they do that. And the point of kind of all this annotation and tagging is at the end of each week they have an assignment, and this is them doing one of the secondary readings. Uh, this is an annotation, oops, of see these where there's like not a whole lot. There's some, but not a whole lot. But the videos are really short. It's all guided towards an assignment they have at the end of the week, in which they I've actually designed Socratic AI tutors for my courses. So they go to this tutor, they plug in the study area that they like, one of the study areas that they've been doing, and they're asked questions. And to answer the question, they have to go back to the reading to get a quote from the reading and their analysis of it in order to successfully uh, answer the question. And they get feedback on it from the AI tutor saying, okay, that's a great quote and your analysis of it is great, or that quote really doesn't address this question. And so it's a back and forth. And then I actually require them to, that's the chatbot, to copy and paste in um, that conversation that includes, like, this one includes the quotation and their analysis of it. So hypothesis really enables that practice, right? They're I don't call it a test, and they don't seem to think of it as quizzes, but that's kind of how they were functioning. But they don't think about it. They just think about it as like I'm having this conversation. Um, and they use those tags. I'm kind of going on too long here. They use those tags uh, later in the semester to kind of collect. It's kind of them doing research um, in which they engage with another chatbot that I built. Sorry, where the chatbot helps them organize all of this information they've collected with hypothesis gives them feedback on their thesis statement and topic sentences, and also gives them feedback on partial first drafts as well. So I really kind of see that those early those reading assignments and their annotations is kind of the foundation for all of that other work, right? They're in a way, it turns that reading kind of into research. All right, so I'll stop sharing there.
That's all very amazing, and I know that a lot of faculty are interested in how you might use annotation alongside AI. One of the things that stuck out to me as you were showing those examples is these are history classes, and primary source texts are so important to the study of history. So you have that work and engagement with the primary materials before students are moving on into these interactions with the kind of synthesizing chatbots, as you called them. So that strikes me as a really creative way of doing that primary source work alongside these newer technologies. That's fascinating. And then also, Canvas Pages is actually one of our lesser used file type. So it's great to see that you are using that alongside the hypothesis tool as well. I am going to, um, yeah, I'm going to just bring in a comment from one of our attendees. Really enjoyed the examples Michael provided for training learners to engage with text and practice skills of quotation, summary analysis, close reading. So just a shout out to you from someone else teaching interpretive humanistic disciplines. So that's really great. Um, I I'm going to save my question about Notebook LLM for later because we're getting closer to time, but I saw that that was also there, so I might reach out to you separately about that. Um, Glenn and Jeremy had questions about specifics related to LMS settings, so I'm going to reach out to each of you. Jeremy especially, there's different settings in D2L depending on what your LMS admin has set up, so I'll reach out to you and I just wanted to note that before we continue with the conversation. Um, and Michael, I think I'm going to pose this question to you from Lauren in chat. They work with middle and high school students. In addition to teaching research skills like annotating, they also teach source management. How do you encourage or model integrating that learning goal? I think of managing sources, maybe for research, is for what
Mm-hmm.
I'm gathering into social annotation instruction.
Yeah. Hmm. Explain a little bit more what you mean by source management.
I think this relates to, and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of sorting and deciding which sources
Right.
to integrate. But Lauren, feel free
Right.
to add something else in QA.
Right. Um, if it's like part of what I'm reading it now too.
Okay.
Like, okay. I think in a way I I move some of that work to the honestly to the AI chatbots that I've created. Another thing that I'm encouraging them to do, although to be honest, not if any of them are really doing it. I'm trying to introduce Notebook LM to them for that type of source management. Um, but to be honest, I'm still trying to figure out like I don't want like AI literacy to kind of take over my class.
Yeah.
And so I'm like teaching them how to use AI responsibly and ethically and smartly. But I don't want that to become the class, even though I think it's really important that they learn those skills. Um, so that's that. I mean, I think that's a great question. I'm still trying to figure it out, I think.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
And I'll also give a plug for our JSTOR session tomorrow. JSTOR is releasing an interactive research tool, which is AI powered, which some of the attendees might find helpful here. It's definitely concerning the topics that we've been discussing over the past 5 or 10 minutes. And that that'll be an interesting conversation if you are, a history instructor or also use primary source materials, even secondary source materials with JSTOR. So I'm going to pose a last question to Jessica first and then Michael as we wrap up here. So, Jessica, what is next for you with annotation? Are there future assignments that you're thinking about adjusting or other kinds of activities integrated with social annotation that you plan on bringing it in the future?
I guess the one thing that I have been thinking about, I'm next academic year, I'll be start teaching one of our research methods classes. And so very early stages of thinking about this, but I was considering using hypothesis annotation for having students assess research methods. So looking at a paper not for, you know, necessarily the content or the findings, but having students use tags and things of that nature to assess how well they think those methods were executed in that particular paper. So for me, that's just a different approach than what I have been using it for currently because it's kind of getting more into focus on these particular topics. Which Michael, I really liked your idea of having them annotate and tag based on topical areas. I think that's potentially really useful in some of my classes as well, but is more in line with kind of what I was thinking for this research methods class too. That's really all. I also haven't done any annotations on videos yet. I just haven't tried. I just haven't tried it. So that's something that's kind of on my mind as well.
Thanks for that. And Michael, I mean, it sounds like you already are doing a lot with all of these different tools, but is there anything that you're working on in the moment that you haven't
Well,
tried out yet?
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I mean, it's hard for me to articulate, but it's around kind of the issue of like digital literacy and how to um, teach them to ask questions, right? It's like I teach history, there's a ton of content, and um, and I'm trying to figure out ways to get them to not only think critically about what they're reading, but to kind of ask questions of what they're reading, and that might get a little bit more into historiography a little bit. But I'm trying to figure out like how to kind of trigger. And I've with some of the discussion boards that I do, I'm asking them to post questions and not respond to questions, but to actually ask questions. And I'm trying to I mean, I think we're at a moment where it's really information literacy is really, really important, and their ability to ask questions about whatever it is that they're consuming is really, really important. And I'm trying to figure out a way to get them to ask to question to question the content that they're consuming. Um, so that's what I'm working on.
That's great. I'm going to leave it there. We will have an upcoming blog post actually about questioning and different types of questions that the folks here might find helpful. But that's a great reminder, Michael. I'm going to wrap things up so that people can move on to the next session. But thank you both for your amazing teaching and sharing all of the interesting things you're bringing to the classroom. So I'll close out and thank you both so much. And thanks everyone for the great questions.